We need to examine the role of the assistant coaches, an element that has been completely overlooked when discussing team accountability. When a head coach is repeatedly captured on video mistreating the franchise's star player on the sidelines, the assistants also bear a level of organizational responsibility. Brian January's confrontations with Clark, including a physical pull seen on tape, and the overall sideline tension extend past the head coach. They reveal a toxic environment that has developed without any public intervention from the front office. This cultural breakdown is a major management failure, not just a coaching issue. The scrutiny surrounding Amber Cox, Kelly Krauskopf, and the team's ownership is now incredibly pressing based on what has played out all season long. From appointing Stephanie White to fostering a damaging staff environment, committing league reporting infractions, and mismanaging player development and court rotations, every issue traces back to poor hiring decisions and a total lack of corporate oversight by management and ownership. Ultimately, a coaching staff merely mirrors the core philosophy of the organization, and that responsibility rests entirely with the executives who put them in power and retain them despite endless warning signs. She has clearly reached her limit with Stephanie White. Her demeanor says it all. This player has mentally checked out of the situation. Congratulations to Stephanie White for successfully draining the competitive spirit right out of Caitlin Clark, because she is officially finished. Welcome back to the channel. Please show your support by hitting the like button, leaving a comment, subscribing, sharing this video, and turning on notifications. I truly appreciate your backing. In all honesty, this season is completely lost. Let me be perfectly clear though, I am standing behind Caitlin Clark completely. To be fair, observing Clark sitting on the bench with her head down isn't a definitive psychological analysis. Reading body language can be highly subjective, and we shouldn't use a brief video segment as absolute validation of her mental state. However, the footage undeniably demonstrates a massive shift away from the passionate, fierce competitiveness that Caitlin showed during the early part of the season. The dramatic difference between her demeanor when the team was thriving versus her appearance in this video is impossible to ignore and deeply concerning. It carries weight. Exactly what it signifies is up to Caitlin to share if she chooses, but the stark difference is completely obvious. This whole mess stems from Stephanie White losing control and choosing to bench her. Take a close look at this exchange between Caitlin Clark and Aliyah Boston. They can be seen whispering to one another immediately after the head coach lost her temper. It is completely obvious on film. Caitlin appears to be saying that they need to get this incompetent person away from the team as soon as possible. Aliyah, there is absolutely no chance I am signing a contract extension with this franchise. That sideline conversation between Clark and Boston, kept private and away from microphones right after that heated interaction, is a real moment, even if we cannot confirm their exact words. We shouldn't try to speculate on private comments shared between teammates. However, the video does prove that the franchise's two cornerstone stars urgently required a private moment to connect during a highly intense and chaotic game. The fact that this talk had to happen at that exact moment is a major red flag by itself. While their private words belong to them, what remains completely open to public criticism is the disastrous tactical plan that threw this game away. A fresh report from Jason Whitlock sheds light on the team's substitution patterns in a way that demands immediate breakdown. Stephanie White approached her player rotations as if her squad was grinding through 3 games in 4 nights, except it was Portland dealing with that grueling schedule. Stephanie White actually inserted 11 different players into the game during the opening quarter alone. She needs to be dismissed immediately. Move on from her. There is simply no justification for deploying 11 players in the first quarter. She constantly acts like she must prove she is the most intelligent person in the room, which makes her the most problematic type of coach. I never claim to have all the answers, but in this instance, I am clearly the one speaking logic. Whitlock highlighted a vital point that a standard box score completely overlooks. The Portland Fire were the team dealing with an exhausting stretch of games, while the Fever were entirely rested. The significant energy gap between the two teams on Saturday should have provided a massive competitive edge. Portland's roster was physically drained, carrying a level of fatigue that sports science shows will severely degrade athletic performance, particularly in the second half when players completely run out of steam. With that context, White's decision to play 11 different players in the opening quarter looks even worse when you remember her squad possessed the rest advantage. When your opponent is playing their 3rd game in 4 nights and you have fresh legs, The correct tactical move is to pressure them by keeping your premier lineups on the floor for extended minutes. This forces an exhausted defense to chase a cohesive, steady system, wearing them down through offensive consistency rather than constant substitutions. Cycling through 11 players in a single quarter achieves the exact opposite result. It gives a tired opponent a constant variety of lineups, different matchups, and shifting defensive looks to adjust to, which lifts the mental and physical burden off exhausted athletes. It prevents your own offense from establishing the rhythm required to fully capitalize on their fatigue. This strategic mistake, relying on a chaotic, heavy substitution model against a team that should have been broken down by steady pressure from your top unit, is the genuine tactical error hidden beneath the poor timing exposed by Whitlock. Pulling both Clark and Boston with 6:30 remaining did far more than halt their momentum. It highlights a deeply flawed rotation strategy that completely ignored how exhausted the opposing team already was on Saturday night. The data collected by Chloe Peterson reveals the damaging reality of that choice. Benching Aliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark at the 6:30 mark of the first quarter immediately triggered a 13-2 scoring run by Portland. Caitlin Clark had already recorded 2 points, 3 assists, and a rebound in just 2.5 minutes of action before being substituted. Indiana was leading 8-4, but Portland went on a 13-2 tear right after. By the time Caitlin checked back into the game, they were trailing 17-10, and from there, the matchup fell into a complete tailspin. The moment Caitlin Clark headed to the bench, the entire game shifted, as the timeline clearly demonstrates. Indiana held an early 8-2 advantage, with Clark producing 2 points, 3 assists, and a board in only 2.5 minutes, leaving Portland struggling and forced to take a timeout. Then, the staff benched Clark and Boston at the 6:30 mark, which sparked Portland's 13-2 scoring surge. This resulted in a 17-10 deficit when Clark finally returned, an 11-point turnaround manufactured entirely by the coaching staff's baffling rotation choices. They allowed this to happen against a team playing its third game in 4 nights, an opponent that should have been entirely worn down at that stage. Coach White defending this as a standard rotation during her post-game press conference is completely unjustifiable on its own merits. It becomes even worse when you consider the exhaustion factor. As Whitlock noted, coaches sometimes defend these heavy rotations by citing load management to protect player endurance over a long season. However, implementing load management when your opponent is far more fatigued than you completely discards the competitive advantage you are supposed to aggressively exploit. You do not rest your elite players when the schedule has already done the work of wearing down the opposition. You apply relentless pressure. And that dynamic is exactly what the Caitlin Clark show was supposed to be, the main event, and they completely ruined it. The Indiana Fever were rapidly becoming the most captivating team in the country, an absolute must-watch broadcast without question. They completely dismantled it, and it is officially over. Take a look at this. These 3 individuals have utterly destroyed the most thrilling basketball team we have ever had the privilege to watch. Amber Cox, Kelly Krauskopf, and Stephanie White have completely derailed this project, and it is finished. The overarching trend is undeniable when you look at the sideline footage and those tense moments involving both White and January. The media infractions, the contradictory statements during press conferences, and the rotation choices that immediately backfire game after game have established a massive track record. At this stage, every new game simply reinforces the existing narrative rather than offering a fresh start. The direction of the franchise is entirely obvious, well documented, and actively damaging their ability to compete. We must address the assistant coaches because they have largely avoided blame in this entire situation. When a head coach is repeatedly seen on camera acting out against their premier player, the assistant coaches in that environment bear institutional responsibility for allowing it. January's tense exchanges with Clark, the physical contact caught on tape, and the sideline arguments do not fall solely on the head coach. They reflect a toxic staff culture that was permitted to grow without any public intervention from management. That environment represents a front office failure rather than an isolated coaching issue. The blame lands squarely on Cox, Krauskopf, and the ownership group above them, and their history makes this an urgent matter. The poor hiring choices, the hostile coaching environment, the media violations, the terrible substitution strategy, and the failed player development all stem directly from mismanagement and a lack of oversight at the executive level. The coaching staff simply reflects the true culture of the franchise, And that responsibility lies completely with the leaders who hired them and kept them around despite endless proof of failure. Caitlin Clark needs to look for an exit strategy, as she deserves a far better professional situation. Erin Kane, step up and do your job. Where are you during all of this? Are you going to intervene, or will you just watch from the sidelines and pretend this massive disaster isn't happening? Do you not see what is taking place right now? Look at how they treat the biggest star in professional basketball. We watch the rest of the league. We see teams like the Dallas Wings fully embrace Paige Bueckers and build around her, protecting their cornerstone talent in sharp contrast to Clark's reality. Her representative, Erin Kane, now possesses a fully documented history of this organization's operational choices. The leverage regarding Clark's contract has been clear ever since her position on an extension became public knowledge, and she still has not committed long-term. The organization simply continues to build the exact pattern of behavior we have been documenting. These two realities are deeply connected, and professional sports agents understand exactly how to utilize them for maximum leverage. Look at how other organizations manage their young generational stars. Dallas supporting Paige Bueckers is the most relevant comparison, serving not as emotional drama but as a professional benchmark. Organizations establishing winning environments around elite young players are making very deliberate management decisions. They create systems tailored specifically to maximize their stars' strengths. Coaching communication must focus on building trust rather than breaking it down, while public commentary should highlight the star instead of minimizing her contributions. Those deliberate choices build a powerful bond between the player and the organization. The record of the Indiana Fever's 2026 season tells a completely different story. Thursday's upcoming game against the Atlanta Dream represents the next piece of data. How ownership handles this growing pile of evidence, whether they take action before, during, or after Thursday, will be the defining moment of the entire season. Regardless of who comes out on top in the game, the evidence is already overwhelming, and the team's owners have all the information they need. Whether and when they will actually make a move is the only remaining question that the data cannot answer ahead of time. This is Clark Heat. Make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications for complete coverage of ownership's next move and the upcoming Atlanta game. Leave your own analytical breakdown in the comments section below. Does Whitlock's data regarding the fatigue difference, with Portland playing their third game in 4 nights against a fully rested Indiana team, make White's 11-player first-quarter rotation and the early benching of Clark and Boston even harder to defend? And does management's decision to retain this coaching staff after Saturday's disastrous performance represent a choice that directly shapes Clark's future extension decisions? Every insightful take in the comments matters, and we will see you as soon as the organization responds.